Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video of me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you something unique and different from my usual, the Blood Shadow Paladin. Now before I get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. Now going into the story behind this character design is the Blood Shadow Paladins are actually paladins of Sithis. They're divine knights, if you will, of Sithis, and tend to work for the Dark Brotherhood, Thieves Guild, even Morag Tong sometimes. They help protect like trade routes of these different factional groups of the larceny types, if you will. And yeah, it's kind of cool. They use their powers and abilities to pull from their enemies and give to themselves. They're really interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So as you can see, this is the Blood Shadow Paladin, the Nightblade character. It is a Dark Elf, and you can be any race with this. I chose Dark Elf because they do get that hybridized ability to play really effectively. So I chose them for this, and you can use any race, like I said. Now the primary role of this character is tank, but they can be support or healers and damage dealers. So as you can see, with being a Dark Elf, we have 40 into health, 10 into magicka, and 14 into stamina to play the tank role. Now if you wanted to play this more as a damage dealer, what you would do is you would actually take everything out of health and you would split it between your magicka and stamina, but you would try to get a little bit more with this character type into magicka. So you'd probably go 34 here and 30 into stamina. It wouldn't give you super large pools, but it would give you enough to where you could play effectively as a damage dealer in Overland and in some cases even dungeons as a damage dealer. Trials, I wouldn't really try playing it as damage dealer. Now if you want to play this character as support or healer, you can take everything out of stamina and health and put it into magicka. They play very powerful healers. So, alright, but moving on. As you can see, we have 22k magicka, 35k health, and 23k stamina with a 1071 mag recovery, a 673 stam recovery, and a 446 health recovery. Our weapon damage is coming in at 2200 with a 1967 spell damage. We do have 22% spell critical with a 31% weapon critical. And we are sitting at 23,000 physical resist and 24,000 spell resist. Now, like I said, this character type can play a lot of different things, primarily tanks and healers, but they can be damage dealers if they want to, but that's primarily for when you're solo playing or you're playing in normal dungeons or even normal trials. If you want to help your group get through a trial and you want to be a more effective damage dealer. Alright, moving on. We are using the Lady Munda Stone to boost our spell and physical resist. That's a kind of important thing. We are using tri-stat food. That is going to be the main food that we use because it's going to boost all three of our stats to allow us to hybridize. And then the final thing is we are a vampire. Now you do not have to be a vampire with this if you don't want to. I chose vampire for this because of the fact that it's the Blood Shadow Paladin, and in their social connections and stuff like that, some of them too do tend to be vampiric or take on the ability of a vampire, so that this way they can draw more from that idea of the blood magic. Alright, moving on to to inventory. Sorry, got a little bit of frog in the throat still. Moving on down here, we do use tri-crown pots mainly for when we're tanking, and then when we're playing healer, we use the stam or spell power pots, and then when we're playing damage dealer, we use stam power pots. And it really depends on which role we're playing. So, now, going over the food, we are using the longfin pasty and melon sauce. This is a great food for this and the way it works. Now, going over the sets, starting with our monster set, and this is where things get interesting, because we are using the Melibeth the Scourge, Scourger's set, and what this does, or Scourge Harvester set, what this does is it gives you more max health on the one piece. On the two piece, when you take damage, you have a 6% chance to create a beam that steals X amount of health over 4 seconds from the attacker. While the beam holds, you gain major vitality, increasing your healing received by 30%. The beam will break if the enemy moves further than 8 meters away, and this effect can occur once every 6 seconds. Now, a lot of times this beam will proc, and you won't even notice it. Your health just doesn't drop. So, the next set we are running is called the Kvetch's Gladiator. Now, I chose Kvetch's Gladiator. I know it seems unusual, but the reason I chose this is 1, the 2-piece is weapon critical, 3-piece weapon critical, 4-piece weapon damage, and then when a target is under 25% health, you add 1800 weapon damage to your light and heavy attacks. This really helps your damage output with sword and shield, because you don't have a lot of like execute type moves with it. So you can use this as a kind of like extra execute type thing for your light and heavy attacks. Then you can deal a lot of damage. Moving on to the other set we are running, and this is another unusual one because a lot of people don't use this, but it is the Sithis set. And the Sithis Touch set is really good for this because it gives you the 2-piece max health, 3-piece max health, 4-piece weapon critical, also spell critical, and then on the 5-piece, it's when you use the Blade of Woe, you gain major berserk for 20 seconds, increasing your damage done by 25%. So if you can sneak up on an enemy, Blade of Woe them, and you come out of that stealth, and if you kill them, the first target, now you've got that greater damage capability for 20 seconds to where you can just unleash. And it's really nice. I use it sometimes when I tank. I know it sounds weird. How would you use this when you're tanking? It does work though. Alright, moving on to the traits and enchants that we run. On the helm, we are running Invigorating, and a lot of people have been bringing this to my attention. Yes, I use a lot of Invigorating in my builds, but mainly for the tanks, or the knights and the paladins, because of the fact of they're in heavy armor, and they don't get a lot of resource management in those armor types. So taking advantage of ways to get higher resource management really plays well into that. When we're not using a heavy armor type, I use other things, and so that way I can take advantage of those other tools. So, but yeah, this is just to help with resource management, and we are wearing a medium helm with a tri-stat enchant so we can hybridize our characters, but we're also using the Invigorating so we can take advantage of both health and stamina recovery depending on which role or situation we're in. Now, moving on to the shoulders. The shoulders are heavy, sturdy, with max health. Now, a lot of my paladin builds will have this same setup. They'll have health in the shoulders and the belt with sturdy enchants because you want to be a more effective tank character, not so much a damage dealer. And then when you're playing support, you want to be an effective support character or healer character, so you want that ability to survive while you're standing up front and fighting. So it's kind of like you become more of a battle priest when you're playing a healer, but at the same time you do more damage than you do healing kind of thing because of the way you're set up. Alright, more melee damage, I should say. Now moving on to the chest. We are using Reinforced with a heavy armor chest with a tri-stat enchant. The tri-stat enchant, again, to hybridize. The Reinforced to maximize this one piece of armor to its maximum resistance value. When you do this with heavy armor on the chest, especially with light armor builds and medium armor builds, you actually get greater survivability for this purpose. So, not all my builds use crafted sets. Some do, some don't. Right, now moving on to the gloves, we are using a sturdy Max Magicka. Now, have you noticed I have a health and a Magicka here? The Magicka is to help boost our Magicka pool a little bit, and the sturdy's here to help us with our block cost reduction. Moving on to the belt, it is a light belt with a max health enchant, sturdy again, and this is heavy, by the way. So, light belt, medium helm, everything else heavy. Sturdy, max health. And again, like I said, this is to maximize our health pool so we can tank more effectively. We use two smaller enchants on the gloves and the boots, so we can take advantage of the other resources like stamina, like we have in the boots, to allow us that greater resource pool in stamina and magicka, but also greater resources in our health for survivability. And we are using sturdy boots with max stamina. Onto the leggings, invigorating with a tri-stat enchant. Again, for the hybridization and the ability to play all 3 roles more effectively with resource management. Alright, moving on to the jewelry. And the jewelry we split in a weird way, so I'm going to go over this. We have 1 Trirune weapon with a weapon damage enchant. The Trirunes allow us to hybridize. The weapon damage allows us to build up more physical damage capabilities. And then we have another Trirune with a spell damage. The Trirune, again, to hybridize. The spell damage to help build up our ability with spell damage abilities, but also our healing factor. So we have that higher spell capability for that. Now moving on to the necklace. We are using an infused magic recovery necklace. Because we are primarily magicka based, most of our stamina based abilities is from our weapons, not our class itself. The class itself and most of the other things besides Fighter's Guild and 1 Psijic Order skill is all magicka based. So we want to focus more on that magicka capabilities for the support side of our character for when we play healer or tank, and then when we're playing damage dealer, we can play off of that high magicka pool, but still focus on that high stamina stuff, because we can put more points into stamina and a little less into magic. Get around 25k magicka, the rest into stamina. You'll have about 28k stamina, but you can effectively play this character as a hybrid damage dealer, and it's really powerful. So, all right. Moving on to the weapons down here. We are using a sword and shield main bar. The shield is sturdy, tri-stat. You guys should have guessed that. I know many of you would have already guessed that in the first place, but I just wanted to point it out. It's really good to have this sturdy shield here because it also reduces that block cost, and it gives you greater resource management with the block cost, with blocking. But on top of that, the tri-stat in there also gives you that greater resource pool so you can tank more effectively. Now, the sword on the front bar is Nirnhone with a weapon and spell damage enchant. I don't know. I don't think that's right. It's not. Nope. It should have been a weakening enchant. See, I make a lot of mistakes sometimes, and I make up for them somehow. So we want to be using a weakening enchant on the front bar here because we are feared by a lot of enemies and stuff. That when a Blood Shadow Paladin shows up, people are afraid because they know that these guys mean business. They are dangerous, so they will be feared by a little bit. So this is why we use the weakening enchant, is to make it seem like they're feared, and when they attack us, you know, they do less damage. So we use that there. And then on the back bar, we do use an infused two-handed greatsword with a weapon and spell damage enchant. This is to maximize our capability with damage and our healing factor, so that way we can take advantage of both aspects of our character. Alright, now that I've done that, let's go over skills. Starting with class skills, I take all magicka based skills. Now the reason I do that is because when I play this character as more of a hybrid, I take advantage of both the magicka and stamina side of this character. So that way I can use both magicka and stamina, be more like a spell sword or a paladin in a sense. So you can use other things too if you want. You can use more stamina based stuff if you want to, that's fine. Onto the shadow side, again, mostly magicka stuff, and then siphoning, mostly magicka stuff. And we use a lot of siphoning stuff that does really heavy healing, so just letting you know. Moving on to the weapons, and also make sure you get all your class passives and abilities. The reason why is because this way you can utilize all the different tools you have in your arsenal for different roles and different situations. Moving on to weapons though, two-handed, we do unlock all the abilities and ultimate and passives here, so we can take advantage of those things for when we're playing different roles, like tank, healer, damage dealer. Sword and shield, same thing. We take advantage of all the sword and shield skills and passives and ultimate, so we can utilize them in different situations again. And those are the weapon types we use. Moving on to armor. We do use one piece of light armor, so we want to take advantage of that in the magic aspect. Same thing with the medium armor. We wear one piece, so we're going to utilize it for the damage aspect of our character. And the light armor is more for the supportive side and the damage side, so we can take advantage of both. Now, moving on to heavy armor, we will take all the passives and the active ability, because the active ability we can also use in PvP. When we're playing more, like say, hybridized or whatever, we can do that, and we can go more hybrid damage in PvP. So it's really nice to have this as a resistance buff if you aren't using any of your shadow type abilities. I still do use this sometimes, or would use that, I should say. Soul magic, we do take all the soul magic ultimate and active abilities and passives. We are a vampire, and we are at a stage max level vampire, and we do use some of these abilities sometimes, like Devouring Swarm, Invigorating Drain, and Baleful Mist, and sometimes in PvE and PvP, and even in Dungeons and Trials. Just depends on the situation and if we need these abilities or not. Guild skills, Fighters Guild, we do unlock all the Fighters Guild abilities and passives. Now, I do like to use Dawnbreaker of Smiting when I'm playing this character as a damage dealer on the front bar, because it just works really well, or even on the back bar sometimes, just to get that 3% extra damage, weapon damage, and then on top of that, the fact that it does damage up front and damage over time. When I tank, sometimes I like to use Silver Leash. I believe I do have it on. No, I do not. But I do have space on the back bar where I can put it. Mages Guild also unlock all the ultimate and active abilities and passives, because you never know. I might use some of these abilities in different situations. Same thing with Psijic Order. This way I can take advantage of every ability my character has in any situation, regardless. Because if we're having trouble getting through content, one of these abilities might come in handy. Undaunted, I unlocked all the active abilities. This is primarily for when I'm playing in Dungeons and Trials. So this way, when I'm playing in a dungeon and trial group, I can offer different synergies of different types in different situations, whether I'm playing a tank, a damage dealer, or a healer. Alliance, I do take the skills and passive, or ultimates and skills and passives for the Alliance War assault skills that best reflect my ability to play this character in PvE. So both assault and support, I do that. When it comes to racial, you can be any race with this. Some other races are more effective, like Imperial is really good with this. Nord is really good with this. With the Nord, you don't have to use the Lady Mundus Stone. You can actually use something else, which is really nice, like the Serpent Stone, so you can get that higher stam recovery. So you can have a mix of stam and magic recovery, which plays really well with the way this build works. So you get that greater capability. On top of that, being a Dark Elf, the reason I chose it was because you get Dynamic, which gives you both magic and stamina, the very hybrid type, and then you get the flame resistance for being a vampire, and then immunity to burning status effect, and then on top of that you get the increased weapon and spell damage. So this plays really well into this hybridized type of play. Alright, moving on to crafting. Alchemy, medicinal use, and provisioning, gourmet, and connoisseur. The alchemy one, medicinal use, makes your potions effectiveness last 30% longer, and then gourmet and connoisseur makes your food last 20 minutes longer. So really, really good things to passives to get for if you are playing in trials or you're playing in dungeons a lot, so you can take advantage of using potions and things like that in those situations. Alright, now going over the skills. Starting with the first skill on our bar, we do have Pierce Armor here. This is a really great damage skill. It also taunts the enemy for 15 seconds, and then on top of that it does apply Major Breach and Major Fracture, which reduces enemy spell and physical resist by 5,280 for 12 seconds. The next ability we have on our bar is Heroic Slash. Now we have this here because it does damage to an enemy. It also reduces their movement speed by 60% for 4 seconds, and then on top of that you get Minor Maim that you apply to the enemy for 12 seconds, which reduces their damage done by 15%. Really, really, really good. And then you also gain Minor Heroism, granting you ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. 9 seconds, one ultimate. Next ability we have is Spike Bone Shield. I really love this ability with this character. It absorbs 34. It creates a shield that absorbs 34% of your max health for 6 seconds and returns 41% of the direct damage absorbed back to the enemy. An ally can activate the Bone Wall synergy, granting them and up to 3 other friendly targets near them a damage shield that absorbs 58% of their max health for 6 seconds. It's a huge shield. Next ability is called Dark Cloak. Now this one, you shroud yourself in protective shadow to heal for X amount every second over 8 seconds. This portion of the ability scales on your max health, and you gain minor protection while shrouded, reducing the damage taken by 8% for the full duration of 8 seconds now. It used to only be 3. Now it's for the full duration. It's really nice. Next up, we have Absorb Magic. Now this is an ability that you can use. It gives you a shield that absorbs 20,000 basically, or X amount of spell damage from a spell projectile, and then heals you for 16% of your max health. While you have this equipped and this ability or a shield equipped and this ability slotted, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 8%, and the amount of blocking, or the cost of blocking, is reduced by 8%. So that's really good when you're using Sword and Shield and you're tanking. Now moving on, we do have Aggressive Warhorn on the front bar. This is to you basically sound the Warhorn to rally your forces, increasing their max magicka and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. You and your allies also gain major force, increasing your critical damage done by 15% for 9 seconds. Moving on to the back bar. This is where things get really interesting, because this is where we tap into more magicka based abilities. First ability we have is Carve. This is so we can keep our weapon damage and spell damage enchant applied more effectively. Now this lasts 10 seconds. It does damage up front and does damage over time. The next ability we use is called Sap Essence. This does magic damage in an 8-meter radius around you. Any enemy hit heals you or your allies for X amount plus 20% for each enemy hit. So you actually can heal for a lot from this. And you gain major sorcery, increasing your spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. So it really helps advance your character's spell capabilities because you use a lot of spell damage tools. The next ability we have is called Debilitate. Now this one does X amount of damage over 10 seconds, and then it also reduces the movement speed of the enemies by 50% for 4 seconds. And then while the effect persists, the enemy is afflicted with minor magicka steal, causing you and your allies to restore 300 magicka every 1 second when damaging them. Next ability we have is called Mirage. Now this we get Major Evasion and Minor Resolve and Minor Ward, which reduces damage from area attacks by 25% and increases physical and spell resistance by 1320 for 26 seconds. Fully buffed, resistances are 30,000, 30,000. With a Nord, it's 32, 32. So, and then, yeah, it's really nice. And then the next ability we have is Leeching, or Siphoning attacks. Now this one, you use Soul Stealing Power, causing your light and heavy attacks to heal you for X amount and restore X amount of magicka for 20 seconds. Fully charged heavy attacks restore twice the value. Now, you restore X amount of magicka when the effect ends based on the length of time Siphoning attack was active. So this allows you to play off that magic side more than the stamina side. This is how we can utilize more magic abilities, is because we siphon a lot of that resource from our enemies by applying Magicka Steal and siphoning it from them indirectly. Or directly, I should say. The next ability we have is a floater. You can use whatever you want here. I prefer to use Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Now what this does is this does a damage up front, damage over time, and it just basically lays flat all the enemies and stuns them for 2 seconds. It's really cool, and I love that ability. It's a lot of fun to use. But you can use a lot of other abilities, like the Shadow skill, Bolstering Darkness, is really good. The Siphoning skill, Soul Siphon, is really good. And even some other ultimates can be really good, but I prefer these two over any of the others. Now that I've shown you the skills, we're going to go over the CP, guys, starting with the Red Tree. In the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad, reducing your damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 20 into Spell Shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1900. Over here, we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. We have 43 into Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And then moving into the final tree of the final red tree, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%, and then 18 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 1729 while wearing 5 pieces or more of heavy armor. Now, if you want, you can put 20 into here and 18 into spell shield, so you will go to the 17 something here and 1900 in the other. That's up to you if you want a little bit more physical resist. Now, moving on to the green tree, we have 40 into Warlord. This reduces the cost of your break free by 16%. We have 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 75 into Arcanist, increasing your mag recovery by 14%. And 43 into Tenacity, increasing your magic and stamina return over fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. Moving on to the final green tree, we have 40 into Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 16%. 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. And then moving into the blue tree, this is a hybrid setup. We have 43 into Bless. This increases your healing done by 10%. 23 into Elfborn, increasing your critical damage and critical healing done with magic abilities by 10%. 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage done by 10%. And then moving on into the middle section here, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attacks for your two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, dual-wield bows, and werewolf form by 20%. And then we have the 40 into Master at Arms, increasing direct damage done by 16%. This does unlock Retaliation, Reposit, which is really good because when you block a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to redirect physical damage back to the enemy, and that can happen every 5 seconds. And you also get Butcher, which increases your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 5% when enemies are below 25% health. Moving on over here, we have 43 into Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage by 10%. 23 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And 20 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. So being more of a hybrid character, these characters can deal damage effectively, not super high damage, but they can heal and support their allies really good, because they have that high healing factor, they have that high critical healing for both spell and physical, and then they do have that higher physical and spell damage output, and also that light and heavy attack damage output. So next, what we're going to do is I'm going to take this into the Depths of Malatar dungeon, so I can show you guys how effective this thing can be as a tank inside a dungeon. Now I'm just going to go in as a tank itself and play through until I get to the boss. And then, of course, do the whole thing like I usually do. Fight the boss for a little bit, die, respawn. Because I can solo these bosses with pretty much any of the builds I show you. This boss, it's not that hard. Just with the tank, it takes a little while, because their damage is horrible. Normally. This case, it's not so bad. But just making sure I got all my stuff set up and situated. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and buff up. Take out the spellcasters first, because they're the worst enemies. I'm gonna go ahead and Dawnbreaker these guys, just to get rid of them. And you see how it knocked her flat? like that. Alright. Moving on to the next room. Remember, like I said, take out the spellcasters first, so this way you can get rid of those ranged combatants and the AoE damage dealers. Then focus on the archer. Alright. And I haven't even used the potion yet. Alright, now we're going to go in and face the boss. And I'm only going to fight the boss for a little bit because I just don't deal a lot of damage with this character. So we're going to do the best we can to basically kill this guy and do some damage, you know. I do like this with the higher stamina and everything, the block cost, because it does allow me to block more effectively, so I can stand more in that poison stuff. Go ahead and Dawnbreaker him again. I probably will get up to the point where I can use Warhorn, so I can show you guys what the effective stats look like on this character with Warhorn. Oh, I got knocked down. Uh-oh. Dark Cloak. Here we go. With Warhorn up, we go to 25k stamina, 24k magicka. This helps out a lot. It might not seem like it, but it does when it comes to the overall effectiveness of damage and stuff that you can do, and also the healing factor of your character. So this way you can help your allies out with healing, some minor healing, not massive healing. And there's that beam right there. Did you guys see it? That purple beam coming off of me? That was the beam for the helm. So I'm going to go ahead and let it kill me now. If it can. I mean, I do have 35k health. This might take a little bit. Just kidding. Alright, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the Way Shrine and, of course, close this video out. So that, my friends, is the Blood Shadow Paladin. It is a really cool, fun build to play. One of my preferred. I mean, I'm half tempted to make this on one of my Shadow Knights. Or Shadow Knights. On one of my Nightblades. Because I really love this character build. It is so fun to play. It is so intense to play. And it's just really different than what you normally see in dungeons and trials. But it works out. So if you guys are interested in this, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.